The 10th anniversary of our firm was supposed to be a victory lap, a chance to pause, breathe, and maybe for once enjoy the view from the top. We'd built it from scratch, 2 laptops, 1 rented office, a shared dream. What started as branding gigs for indie coffee shops and yoga retreats had grown into a nationally recognized creative agency with Fortune 500 clients and a 6-month waiting list. Jenna and I were the face of it all, co-founders, business partners, and to everyone else, that annoying power couple that somehow made entrepreneurship and marriage look easy. The celebration was held at a vineyard estate about 45 minutes outside of Seattle, scenic, sophisticated, a touch rustic. Jenna picked it, of course. She had a sixth sense for ambience. Everything was flawless, strings of Edison bulbs over reclaimed wood tables, a jazz trio playing near the fire pits, embossed gift bags with personalized thank you notes. We arrived in separate cars. Jenna had left early to do a final walkthrough and coordinate with the event staff. I showed up in time for the cocktail hour, loosened my tie, and made the rounds. Everywhere I turned, people were raising glasses, laughing about the early days, snapping photos under our firm's logo, which was projected in gold on the stone wall behind the stage. It felt like a wedding we never really had time to plan. Eventually, the mic found its way into my hand and I was ushered up to the small stage near the courtyard fountain. I looked out at our team, our clients, our community, and Jenna, standing near the back, effortlessly radiant in a black dress that shimmered with every movement. She caught my eye, gave me the practiced smile, the one she knew disarmed rooms and charmed investors. I cleared my throat and launched into the speech. I spoke about resilience, about risk, about those early nights eating takeout on the floor of our first office, arguing about font choices and invoice templates. I shouted out our longest-standing clients, our first intern, who was now a project lead, and the vendors who stuck with us when we couldn't pay net 30. And then I turned to Jenna. This firm wouldn't exist without her, I said, my voice a little rougher than I expected. Not just because she co-founded it, but because she believed in it and in me before there was anything worth believing in. There were cheers. Clinks of glasses. Someone in the back shouted to Jenna and she raised her glass in acknowledgement. She smiled again, camera perfect, and I saw the flash of our event photographer catching it from the left. She walked up, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "You're too good to me." I wrapped an arm around her, but she gently pulled away, saying, "Back in a sec, shipment issue with the caterers. Just need to check something." And that was that. She disappeared behind a row of hedges toward the event house. I mingled. Shook hands. Did my part, but a sliver of something I couldn't name had worked its way into my gut. Maybe it was the way she said shipment, too casual, too rehearsed. Maybe it was nothing. Roughly an hour later, I was chatting with Rachel, one of our junior designers, and a couple of marketing associates near the AV setup. Rachel was fiddling with her phone, trying to send a cute team photo she'd taken to the screen behind the bar, just a fun end-of-night slideshow sort of thing. Her phone pinged once. Then again. She tapped something and suddenly the main screen flashed. It was an image, a mirror selfie. Not the group sh*T. It took everyone a second to realize what they were seeing. It was Jenna. In that same black dress. But the angle was different. It was taken in a hotel bathroom. She was half-turned, her arm raised to hold her phone, the dress tugged slightly off one shoulder. Her hand rested softly, unmistakably, on the bare chest of a man standing behind her. You couldn't see his face, the photo was artfully cropped, but you could see the curve of his jaw, the outline of his hand against her hip. The room stilled. A few gasps. Some awkward laughter. Someone at the bar whispered, "Wait, is that her?" Rachel went white. "Oh my God, that wasn't the photo I meant to send." People started murmuring. A few phones were already out. Screens were lighting up. And just like that, the illusion cracked. Jenna reappeared 5 minutes later, walking briskly from the side patio. Someone must have shown her the screen on the way in because her composure was already set full PR mode. She strode right up to the bar, looked at the screen, let out a short, breathy laugh and said, "Oh my God, that was a joke from years ago. My cousin Nick and I took that before his wedding, total throwback. He dared me to post it to his friends as a prank. He's gay, by the way, totally harmless." Her tone was light, teasing. She played it like a shared inside joke, the kind of thing you roll your eyes at and move on from. Most people laughed nervously. Some nodded. A few offered tight smiles and quickly changed the subject. The image disappeared from the screen and was replaced by our firm's highlight reel. Laughter slowly returned. She found me by the hors d'oeuvres table, kissed my cheek again, and said, "Crisis averted. Remind me to never let Rachel near an AV system again." I forced a smile. Nodded. But inside? Something snapped. quietly, like a piano string. I've never been one for drama. I don't throw fits. I don't accuse without evidence. I've built my life on logic, precision, patterns. But my brain started to catalog every little thing that suddenly didn't make sense. The dress, she hadn't worn it in years. I remembered because she bought it for a fundraising gala 3 years ago and she hadn't touched it since. I would have remembered if she'd pulled it out recently for some supposed cousin prank. The bathroom, that was no home setup. That was a hotel vanity. You could tell by the lighting, the towels, the stupid mini lotion bottles lined up on the edge. And the hand, the man's hand, it wasn't casually placed. It was familiar. Like it belonged there. And I realized in that moment Jenna hadn't denied the photo was recent. She hadn't offered a date. She hadn't even said which cousin it was until she had to. Her explanation was polished, practiced, not spontaneous. It didn't smell like surprise. It smelled like strategy. I watched her weave her way through the crowd, smiling, laughing, brushing fingers along shoulders like nothing had happened. But something had. She could smooth over the crowd. She could redirect the conversation. But she couldn't unsnap whatever had broken inside me. Not that night. Not ever. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of our hotel suite while Jenna slept beside me or pretended to. She turned away from me, her back perfectly still under the covers, like a sculpture of herself. The rhythmic sound of her breathing should have calmed me, but it didn't. It felt calculated. Measured. The kind of breathing you do when you know someone is listening. I could have asked her again about the photo. I could have pressed. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I stayed quiet. I let the silence work on me. It's strange how suspicion changes the shape of memory. The same moments that once seemed innocuous, maybe even sweet, suddenly become laced with meaning. That night, in the stillness, my brain started digging, unprompted, involuntarily, through a decade of details I had once overlooked. Like how, over the past year, Jenna had started taking overnight strategy retreats, spontaneous trips she swore were necessary to align with vendors or brainstorm without distractions. At first, I didn't question it. She'd always been intense about work. But now I couldn't help but notice how they never showed up on any shared calendar. She'd just tell me in passing, usually the morning of. Last-minute change, she'd say, tossing a blazer into her carry-on. Don't wait up. And I didn't. Like an idiot, I didn't. Her wardrobe had changed too slowly but noticeably. She said it was about rebranding optics, which made sense at the time. She'd shifted her role into more public-facing duties, keynotes, panels, brand interviews. I supported the change. Encouraged it. But in hindsight, the clothing wasn't just polished. It was curated, tailored dresses with plunging backs, shoes too impractical for the office, lingerie I never saw in our bedroom. Then there was the cologne. That one hit me in waves. I remembered the first time I smelled it, sharp, peppery, too masculine to be her usual vanilla and rose scent. She'd come home late, kissed me on the cheek, and I'd caught a hint of it on her neck. I'd said nothing at the time. Maybe it was from a hug. A handshake. A client. There are so many excuses when you're trying not to see what's in front of you. Now I knew better. There were other little things. Patterns I'd ignored. Like how she'd started keeping her phone face down at dinner. She used to send me memes mid-meal. Now her phone only buzzed with silent alerts and she'd glance at it with that look, the one people give when they're weighing whether they should answer. Her lock screen used to be a picture of us, grainy, smiling on a dock in Maine during our 3rd anniversary trip. She changed it to some generic quote, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." I remember reading that line for the first time and thinking it felt oddly impersonal. When I asked her about it, she said she was manifesting a new energy for the company. Maybe she was manifesting something else entirely. And then there was that brunch. The one with the investors. She introduced me by name, just my name. "This is Lucas," she'd said. "Not my husband. Not my co-founder. Just Lucas." The way you'd introduce a college friend you ran into at the airport. Casual. Forgettable. I'd laughed it off at the time. Said something like, "I guess I've been downgraded." She laughed too, but it was tight, strained, like I'd caught her off script. God, there were so many moments like that. Moments I chose not to dig into because I didn't want to be the paranoid husband. Because I trusted her. Because I was afraid of what I'd find if I actually started looking. And now I couldn't stop looking. The photo had flipped a switch in my brain and suddenly I was sorting through a mental junk drawer full of things I'd stuffed away. Like the time she came home after one of her strategy meetings and immediately took a shower, said she'd spilled something on her blouse. The blouse was in the laundry bin when I checked later. It smelled like hotel soap and too much citrus. Or how she started deflecting any time I mentioned the idea of kids. Let's not rush it, she'd say, or we've got enough on our plates right now. But it wasn't just hesitation, it was evasion. And maybe I wouldn't have noticed before, but now I saw it for what it was, distance. A slow, methodical pulling away. The more I let my mind drift, the more the image of the photo clawed its way back in Jenna's hand resting softly, familiarly on someone else. Not by accident. Not for a prank. With intention. With ease. And her face, her eyes, caught halfway between a smirk and a secret. I lay in bed that night, not moving, barely blinking. I watched the light from the hallway cast soft lines across the ceiling and felt my own pulse in my throat. She wasn't who I thought she was. Or maybe she hadn't been for a long time and I just didn't want to see it. The next morning, Jenna was already up, humming in the kitchen like nothing had happened. French press coffee, toasted brioche, that annoying competence she wore like armor. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted eggs. Sure, I said, watching her hands move through the breakfast routine like choreography. She didn't ask about my sleep. Didn't mention the photo again. That should have been the tell. I forced a smile. Told her I was heading into the office later than usual, needed to stop by the printer for some client materials. She nodded without looking at me, scrolling her phone with one hand, whisking eggs with the other. That's when I saw it again, her lock screen lighting up with another motivational quote. This one said, "Don't wait for permission to live the life you deserve." I didn't say a word, but inside I heard something very quietly click into place. 3 days later, I found out the truth. Not just the kind of truth you feel in your bones, but the kind you can't unsee, the kind that burns itself into memory and leaves a mark. It started as something simple. Jenna had left a few signed contracts at the office that were supposed to go out to one of our longtime clients by end of day. She texted me that morning casually like she always did, "Hey, can you swing by the downtown office?" Left those Bender and Company docs in the conference room. Totally spaced. Sorry. I told her I'd take care of it. What I didn't tell her was that I hadn't planned to be in that part of town. I hadn't planned to go into the office at all. But something about the request felt too convenient. Like a setup or a cover. So I didn't take the front entrance. I parked in the alley and used my old keycard to slip in through the side door, the one near the loading dock. It was quiet, mid-afternoon, midweek, most of the team worked hybrid now, and on Wednesdays, the office felt more like a ghost town. I didn't hear voices at first. Just the low hum of the AC and the occasional creak of the floorboards above. I moved toward the conference room, expecting to find the folder sitting neatly on the table like she said. Instead, I saw movement. The glass walls of the room are partially frosted, a design choice we made early on to allow for privacy without losing transparency. There's a strip through the center that stays clear, just above table height. And through that window, I saw Jenna, sitting on the edge of the table, legs crossed, one heel dangling lazily. She was leaning in, not toward her laptop, not toward documents, but toward Aiden. Aiden, our 21-year-old social media intern. He was perched in the chair closest to her, his posture too casual for a business conversation. He was smiling, saying something low enough that I couldn't hear it. His hand, small, unsure, but confident enough to try it, reached up and rested gently on her knee. She didn't flinch. Didn't move away. She leaned in further. And then, like some sick movie playing out behind soundproof glass, I watched as their lips met. Her hand found the back of his neck, fingers curling into his collar like it was familiar. Like this wasn't the first time. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stood there. My hands went cold. My brain blanked out for a second as if my body was giving me one last mercy before it hit. I backed away. Quiet. Deliberate. Like I was afraid of waking a bear. I found the folder sitting right where she said it'd be, stacked on a bench outside the room. I picked it up, held it tight against my chest like it could anchor me, like it was the only thing in that moment that still made sense. And then I left. I didn't say a word. Didn't text. Didn't call. I walked back to my car and sat there in silence for a full 10 minutes, watching the daylight shift across my windshield. My reflection stared back at me in the rearview mirror, blank and stunned. I looked like I'd just been in a car crash, and in a way I had. I kept replaying it. Her on that table. Her smile. The way her hand curved around Aiden's joy like it belonged there. It wasn't even the kiss that hit hardest, it was the ease of it. The routine. The calm. She wasn't struggling with guilt. She wasn't torn. She was comfortable. Relaxed. Like she knew the rhythm already. That image, it started replacing everything else. Our wedding day gone. That Christmas morning when we danced in the kitchen to old records overwritten. Every kiss, every quiet night on the couch, every joke only we understood, all of it began eroding under the weight of what I'd seen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in that parking garage with a manila folder in my lap, watching the life I'd built collapse quietly inside me. Eventually, I drove home. I didn't even remember the drive, I just remember pulling into the driveway and realizing I had no plan. That's when the questions started, the brutal, specific kind. How long had it been going on? Why Aiden? Was it just him? Did anyone else know? The idea that our employees might have seen something and stayed silent made my stomach turn. Had they whispered behind my back? Had they pitted me? I couldn't bear the thought. And yet I didn't storm into her office. I didn't explode. That wasn't me. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. Instead, I sat at the kitchen counter and opened my laptop. And that's when I started laying the groundwork. Not for revenge. Not for answers. But for extraction. Because if Jenna was capable of this, if she could sit in our conference room and kiss a kid we'd mentored like nothing mattered, then the person I thought I married didn't exist anymore. And there was no salvaging what never was. That night, she came home a little late, nothing suspicious, just enough to notice. She dropped her keys on the counter, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thanks for grabbing those documents today. You're a lifesaver." I smiled. Said, "Of course." And I swear to God, she didn't flinch. No guilt in her eyes. No hesitation. Just that same smooth delivery. That same practiced tone. And I realized then she wasn't just betraying me. She was erasing me. Bit by bit. Smile by smile. Until I'd be nothing but a name on an old business registration. I stayed quiet that evening. Ate dinner. Watched a show with her like nothing had changed. Because that's what she'd done to me every night, probably for weeks, maybe months. She played house. And now it was my turn. The next morning, while Jenna was in the shower, I packed a small duffel. Just the essentials, laptop, a few changes of clothes, my passport, and a backup drive with every critical document from the past 10 years. I made it look like I was heading to the gym or taking an early meeting. I even poured myself a travel mug of coffee on the way out just to complete the lie. I didn't tell her I wouldn't be coming back. That's the thing no one tells you about betrayal. Once you see it clearly, there's no blow-up. No rage. Just silence. Stillness. The body understands it before the mind does. I wasn't furious. I was precise. I drove east. Past the city, past the suburbs, past the last place where anyone would expect me to go. I headed toward a cabin I'd quietly bought during the pandemic, a one-bedroom place by a lake near Spokane. At the time, I told Jenna it was a long-term rental investment. She never bothered to check the deed. Never asked how it was registered. Truth was, I bought it under a shell entity, not because I was planning for this moment, but because I liked the idea of having something that was mine alone. A safety valve. A place to disappear if I ever needed to. Now, I needed it. The drive took most of the day. By the time I got there, the sun was low over the trees, casting the lake in deep amber. I keyed into the lockbox, turned on the power, and let the silence settle over me. No neighbors. No notifications. Just trees, water, and the sharp, clean smell of isolation. And that's where the extraction began. First, the finances. Over the years, Jenna and I had pooled almost everything. Joint accounts, shared cards, mutual investments. But I'd kept one asset separate. A trust account tied to the shell entity that owned the cabin. It was designed for overflow income, royalties from a branding book I'd ghostwritten, and quiet side consulting work I never put on our books. She didn't know it existed. I spent the evening routing funds from our business checking into the trust. Not all of it. Just the portion tied to my name, bonuses, dividends, reimbursements. Anything I could justify as legitimately mine. I wasn't stealing from her. I was reclaiming what she would have taken without hesitation. Then I got to work on Access. Every tool, every dashboard, every login we shared, Slack, Trello, payroll systems, client portals, I reset it all. One by one. Passwords were changed. 2FA was rerouted to my backup number. Her access tokens were revoked, her admin rights stripped, her recovery email removed. Took hours. But I wasn't in a hurry. I moved with the same calm I'd seen in her face when she kissed Aiden. When I was done, I stared at the final screen, our joint Google Drive. Years of proposals, pitch decks, campaign archives, travel plans. Dozens of folders marked personal. Photos from Bali, anniversaries, the first apartment. I hovered over the delete button, but I didn't press it. Not because I was sentimental, but because she didn't deserve erasure. She deserved to sit in the ruins, to answer for the quiet, for the things that simply stopped working. I left the folders intact. but I copied every file onto my own drive, then revoked her access. Let her wonder. Next came the practical stuff. I called the property manager for our office building and issued a lock reset request. Our lease was in both our names, but the security tokens were individual. I told him Jenna had lost hers. Company protocol dictated reissuance under my approval. He agreed without question. I added a clause. Reactivation pending full access audit. Translation. Her badge would fail next time she tried to swipe in. I paused for a moment, sipping coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier. Then I opened our project management system and reassigned all her team leads to other managers. I didn't delete her account. That would have raised alarms. I just downgraded it. Quietly. She'd still get login emails, but they'd bounce back the moment she tried to update anything. I left her credit cards alone for now. I gave her one more day, one more normal morning, one more iced oat milk latte on the company card. Then brunch would hit and the transaction would fail. Not because of fraud. Because I'd removed her from the shared Amex and flagged her card as inactive employee. No alerts. No confrontation. Just consequence. The last thing I did before closing my laptop that night was open our shared calendar. The one she stopped using about 4 months ago, right around the time I imagine her meetings with Aiden started happening. I scheduled one final event. Notice of dissolution. 9 a.m. Monday. Invite sent to her email only. Attached was a PDF. Updated business records showing her removal from partner status, and a new LLC filing with my name as sole owner. It wasn't official yet, but the legal groundwork had been laid. She'd find out soon enough. I leaned back in the chair, the cabin creaking softly around me, and stared at the ceiling. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. Not in the way I thought I'd be. I was just done. You can only be betrayed by someone you believe in. And belief, once broken, doesn't scream. It just walks away. I left my phone face down on the table, turned off notifications, and let the silence fill the space between thoughts. I didn't want updates. Didn't want news. The message had been sent, and I didn't need to be in the room when it landed. By the time brunch rolled around the next morning, I was back on the deck of the cabin, wrapped in a flannel I hadn't worn in years, staring out at the lake while a pot of coffee went cold beside me. The stillness out there felt like insulation, like I'd wrapped myself in silence too thick for noise to get through. But 10:17 a.m. was when I knew it would start. That's when her card would be declined. I could picture it clearly. Jenna at her favorite cafe, the one with the sleek cement counters and overpriced beet lattes, dressed like it was a networking event instead of a Sunday morning, scrolling Instagram while waiting for her usual. She'd tap her card at the register, wait for the beep, then the delay, then the polite smile from the barista who'd recognize her and say, looks like something's off. Wanna try again? And that's when the first thread would pull loose. No money missing. No confrontation. Just something not working the way it used to. The text started at 10:21 a.m. Not that I was checking, but I saw them roll in on my secondary phone. The one linked to our shared accounts. I didn't reply. I didn't even open them. But I watched them pile up, each one a little more frantic than the last. Jenna 10:21 a.m. Hey, did the card get flagged or something? It got declined at Morningside. Can you check? Jenna 10:35 a.m. Okay, this is weird. I can't log into the company drive. Did you change the password? Jenna 10:52 a.m. Lucas. Seriously, what's going on? I silenced the phone and slid it into the drawer with the others' old devices, past versions of myself. That's all she was now. A version I no longer needed to update. From what I heard later, through mutuals, through whispered group chats, things unraveled fast. Aiden was the first to go. He quit via email that night. No 2-week notice. No explanation. Just a subject line that read, stepping away, thank you for everything. He CC'd HR and vanished. No one asked why. They didn't have to. The office Slack was unusually quiet that Monday. A few polite messages in team channels. But the tone had changed. Jenna tried to act normal, responding to a client feedback thread, nudging a campaign brief forward, but the replies were dry. Distant. Our creative director removed her from the brand review channel by Tuesday. By Wednesday, one of our legacy clients, the one we'd spent 6 months courting, pulled out of their contract due to internal budget shifts. But we both knew better. The whisper network inside design firms is faster than any PR campaign. One look at a suspicious photo, a few rumors about an intern, and people start creating space. Not scandal. Just silence. That's what made it worse, I think. Jenna wasn't publicly disgraced. She wasn't outed in some massive social post or company-wide email. No one screamed. No one stormed out. People just stopped including her. Stopped trusting her. The brand we'd spent a decade crafting, her poised, charismatic image, began to chip and crumble, not with fire, but with frost. She tried reaching me again on Thursday. This time in email. The subject line was, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew that version of talk. It was the performative kind, the spin, the damage control. She didn't want clarity. She wanted salvage. Meanwhile, the home we'd shared for 7 years felt like a ghost story I no longer believed in. I imagined her walking into the bedroom and finding my half of the closet empty. No toothbrush in the cup. No charger on the nightstand. Just gaps. Her face when she realized the server password no longer worked. The moment she noticed that her name had disappeared from the company's internal org chart. There's a grief in being erased. And that's what I gave her. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just the mirror. She was left to answer questions I no longer needed to ask. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not at first. Not even my best friend, Ryan, who called that weekend after noticing I'd gone off the grid. "You okay, man?" he asked. "Getting there," I said. He didn't push. That's why he's the one person I kept in my circle. Everyone else? Muted. Not out of malice, just necessity. I needed to detox from the version of myself that had tolerated lies disguised as ambition, strategy, optics. I stayed offline. No posts. No vague quotes. No dramatic captions. Jenna tried her own version of subtle damage control. She updated her LinkedIn bio, currently exploring new creative paths. Previously co-founder at our company name. Previously. The word landed heavy. Her Instagram went dark for a few days. Then came the soft reboot, photos of flowers, open books, her hand curled around a matcha mug. The carefully curated still life of reinvention. But none of it played the same without the context. People noticed the absence. The things that weren't said. One client reached out directly to me, someone Jenna had always claimed as her win. They asked if we were still working together. I said we weren't. They didn't ask why. They just nodded through the phone and said, "Understood." They signed a solo retainer with me the next day. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. It just felt inevitable. Like gravity doing its thing. That's what betrayal does, not just in love, but in business too. It erodes your sense of narrative. It forces you to reevaluate every decision you thought was solid. And yet, strangely, I didn't feel broken. I felt hollow, sure, emptied out. But underneath that, there was structure. The frame of something waiting to be rebuilt. The pieces were there. They just weren't hers anymore. The lake cabin was never meant to be permanent, but weeks passed and I didn't leave. The phone stopped buzzing eventually. Jenna's messages dried up. The business stabilized under my hand, leaner but lighter. The silence didn't feel lonely anymore, it felt earned. One morning, I wandered farther down the trail behind the cabin than usual and found a small clearing with a tripod set up, abandoned. A few days later, I ran into its owner, Claire, a landscape photographer who lived in a solar-powered Airstream tucked into the woods for the season. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said sure. We sat on a log drinking from mismatched mugs, watching fog roll across the lake like it was performing just for us. She didn't ask where I came from. I didn't offer. Over time, she became part of my mornings. Sometimes we hiked together in silence. Sometimes she read while I split firewood. There was no flirtation, no hidden tension, just presence. The kind I hadn't felt in years. Claire noticed things. She'd point out a fox trail I would have missed or how the sky turned lavender 10 minutes before sundown. She never asked what I'd left behind, but I think she knew. Being around her reminded me that I didn't need to prove anything. Not worth, not ambition, not recovery. Some things weren't meant to be branded. They were just meant to be lived. And that's when I started to feel it again, not happiness, not yet. But peace. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind you grow into. It came in quietly like everything else. An email. No subject line. Just a message from Jenna a full month after the last attempt. "You were right to leave." That was it. No apology. No defense. No plea for understanding. Just 7 words. I stared at it for a while. Then I closed the laptop. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. No need to rewrite history or seek validation. Her choices were hers. Mine were mine. That night, Claire and I sat on the dock as the sun dropped behind the ridge. I was barefoot, legs in the water, a copy of a book